Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Khalil Jahshan. I'm the Executive Director of Arab Center, Washington. I'd like to welcome all of you to this special event, special lunch, in honor of His Excellency, the Foreign Minister of Qatar, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jazeera Al-Thani, who happens to be in town, as all of you probably noticed in the news, to meet with American officials, both in the executive and the legislative branches of government, including, of course, the Secretary of State, who has been involved in trying to somehow bridge the gap, as they say in diplomatic lingo, between the parties. Just a couple of minor items in terms of logistics. I'm sure every one of you received the booklet, which includes at least 10 or 12 articles written by my colleagues at the center regarding the crisis, to give you a background, starting from the historical background leading to this crisis in the Gulf, to a legal analysis of the demands that are being placed on Qatar. I hope you will take advantage of that, and should you need any more information or interviews, please feel free to contact the center. I'd like to thank our analysis team and all of our staff at the center for the great efforts they have spent to make this event possible. The title of the presentation by His Excellency will be Resolving the Gulf Crisis, Challenges and Prospects. And as all of you know, I mean, we have probably more expertise on the Gulf in general and on foreign policy in particular in this room, more expertise per square inch than you could find anywhere else in this town, so I don't need to repeat anything at all. Suffice to say that it's been an eventful month over the past almost 4 weeks. Since the beginning of this crisis. And a lot of questions have been asked, and I'm sure those of you, particularly in the media and the think tank community, have a lot of questions to raise with regards to this crisis in terms of the causes that led to it and to the current situation and update on the crisis itself and where do we go from here in terms of the prospect. No one is better equipped to answer these questions and to give us an update on this crisis than our guest of honor today, and we are definitely honored to have him today. Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jazeera Al-Thani is the Minister of Foreign Affairs, as I said, of the State of Qatar, and he holds a BA in Economics and Business Administration from Qatar University. Sheikh Mohammed joined the Supreme Council for Family Affairs in 2003 as an economic researcher, and he quickly got promoted until he reached the position of Director of Economic Affairs between 2005 and 2009. He was appointed manager for the project on supporting and developing small and medium-scale state enterprises at the Qatari Ministry of Business and Trade back in March 2009. He was later appointed Director of the Department of Public-Private Sectors Partnerships at the Ministry of Business and Trade. He, after that, was appointed Secretary of the Personal Representative of His Highness the Emir for follow-up affairs at the Emiri Diwan. He also serves on the board of directors of several organizations and institutions in Qatar, dealing with business, dealing with the economy, and dealing also with foreign policy. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a warm welcome to His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed Al-Thani, the Foreign Minister of Qatar.
Thank you, Khalil. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you, Khalil, for your kind introduction, and special thanks to the Board of Directors and staff of Arab Center in Washington, D.C. for your kind invitation and for sponsoring this event and providing me this opportunity to address such a distinguished audience. It is a great to visit Washington, D.C. again and to meet with public officials, opinion makers, business leaders, and our many American friends, particularly at this critical time. Ladies and gentlemen, Qatar marked out a unique path for itself among Arab states, spearheading efforts for the non-violent resolutions of regional and global conflicts. The Qatari approach has helped to bring about the integration of movements that had previously faced complete exclusion from political process. Other states have looked suspiciously at Qatar's willingness to broker dialogue between the Sudanese regime and the armed groups, or the two major competing camps in Lebanon. They have refused to accept the fact that Qatar can hold on its commitments to international alliances, including with the United States and other Western powers, while at the same building the rapports necessary for its mediatory role. Qatar's willingness to play this role has made possible the necessary but difficult task of international dialogue. Qatar is much more than a mediator on the world stage or a political platform, but rather a humanitarian partner seeking to replace weapons with pens, desperation with hope. It is a state and society devoted to addressing the human capital and infrastructure needs of its citizens and residents alike. It is success in these fields attested to by internationally agreed standards of human development, which take up the greatest attention of Qatari policymakers and against which they should be judged. As you all know, our region is experiencing some serious political turbulence, which is affecting the national interest of all countries in the region and the national interest of the United States, as a consequence of the strong alliance that binds our respective countries and the strategic value of the region towards security and stability. As reported in the media, I held an important meeting on Tuesday afternoon with U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson to discuss the current crisis in the Gulf and to explore the prospects for political solution to the conflict. The people and the government of Qatar are grateful to Secretary Tillerson for his invaluable efforts on behalf of the American government to assist all parties in the Arabian Gulf to overcome their differences and restore normalcy to political, social, and economic life in the region. The State of Qatar has been committed to bringing an end to the current crisis from its very inception. We have stated consistently and unequivocally that Qatar is willing to sit down with our neighbors to discuss all issues pertaining to regional security and stability, so long as these demands do not infringe upon our independence and national sovereignty. I have more thoughts to share with you about the meeting, but I would like to spend a few minutes discussing briefly the background to the Gulf crisis. 24 days have passed since the unilateral measures were against the State of Qatar. 12,000 cases of human rights violation were filed. Thousands of families and friends being separated during the holy month of Ramadan. Wives from their husbands, mothers from their children, thousands of journalists and civilians silenced through arbitrary measures. As proven by the FBI, on May 24th, the Qatar news agency was hacked and attributed fabricated statements to His Highness the Emir about Qatar relations with Iran, Israel, Hamas, and the United States. We immediately denied the false statements. As all of you are aware, on June 5th, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt announced their decision to sever diplomatic and trade relations and to close their borders and airspace with the State of Qatar. We were surprised and frankly shocked by these measures and considered them unwarranted and unjustified. As the 2014 arbitrary mechanism outlined in the GCC agreement was never invoked, these hostile actions were based on unsubstantiated claims and false assumptions, and evidence is yet to be presented. First, the false news, then the allegation, then a list of grievances, and finally an ultimatum. Qatar was immediately subjected to a pre-planned campaign of disinformation based on complete fabrication aimed at undermining our national sovereignty and interfering in our internal affairs as an independent state. Qatar, as widely known, is a founding member of the Cooperation Council for the Arab States of the Gulf Cooperation Council. We have been fully committed to the GCC Charter, and we have always respected the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of our fellow member states. Qatar prides itself on having fulfilled all its commitment to the GCC and on having defended GCC interest and advanced the GCC economic, social, and political agenda. Qatar's role in the liberation of Kuwait and more recently protecting the Saudi borders in the ongoing war in Yemen presents a solid evidence of that unshakable commitment to the GCC Charter. The same applies to Qatar's record in combating global terrorism and preventing the financing of terrorist groups. We acknowledge the challenge and obstacles that Qatar faces in countering terrorism. However, this challenge is not unique to Qatar. It is a phenomenon that has plagued our region, and we seek to collectively counter terrorism through bilateral and multilateral cooperation. As a member of the Middle East North Africa Financial Action Task Force, Qatar has taken significant and substantive steps to prevent the transfer of funds through domestic or foreign charities to any organization named on the United Nations list of designated terrorist organizations. Our efforts in this regard have been consistently acknowledged and praised by the US State Department and the Treasury Department. Our record in preventing the financing of terrorist organizations speaks for itself, and we are ready to compare our record with the record of any of the blockading countries. In parallel to implementing legislative changes to prevent funding of terrorist activities, it's worthy to note that the State of Qatar implements a countering violent extremism strategy through a development-based approach, which includes reconstruction, education, and economic empowerment. Whether through supporting multi-billion-dollar funds toward rebuilding Gaza and Darfur, or providing quality education to 7 million out-of-school children in 42 countries, including thousands of Syrian refugees and impoverished children in Pakistan and Afghanistan, or through providing jobs opportunity and economic empowerment to 300,000 Arab youth, including thousands of opportunity for the youth of Tunisia and Egypt. Qatar's ongoing efforts have benefited the millions of people vulnerable to violent extremism and terrorism, which in turn has reduced the risk of global terrorism. After almost 3 weeks of the inhuman siege, on June 23, 2017, the blockading countries' long-awaited list of demands was presented by the State of Kuwait to our government. As all of you are aware, the list contains numerous demands ranging from demand that we curb our diplomatic ties with Iran, to demand that we sever ties with alleged terrorists, shut down free media, terminate military alliances, amend our immigration and citizenship laws to exclude the nationals of various countries, and pay reparation for fictional crimes. On top of this, Qatar is expected to submit to a period of probation, while our compliance with these unreasonable demands is monitored by outside countries. The response of Qatar has been purposely measured yet unequivocal. We are willing to negotiate any legitimate grievances with our neighbors, but we will not compromise our national sovereignty. Secretary Tillerson himself acknowledged that the demands issued by the blockading countries will be very difficult to meet. And the German Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel stated that the demands were very provocative. As some items challenge our sovereignty, this ultimatum, ladies and gentlemen, is not a list of demands or requests, but a clear effort to undermine our foreign policy and national sovereignty, as one of our neighboring countries mentioned that this list is not negotiable. Let me make few remarks about my meeting on Tuesday with Secretary Tillerson. The meeting was excellent and constructive. I briefed the Secretary about the latest developments in the crisis and the impact of the siege on Qatar. We did exchange views about the list of demands that were made by the blockading countries, which was submitted to my government by our brothers in Kuwait, who have graciously continued their mediation efforts to resolve this crisis. Both Qatar and the United States agreed in our meeting on the urgency to pursue a political solution to this crisis, but discussing the allegation leveled at Qatar in reasonable and straightforward manner. I emphasized to the Secretary that suggestions by certain parties that their demands are not negotiable are not helpful. Serious and lasting solutions to this or any other issue require negotiation within a clear framework. In accordance with the international law, non-negotiable ultimatums are obstacles to the fair and just resolutions of our differences. The GCC is the last source of stability in the region. We cannot afford another conflict in the region. The siege is a clear act of aggression on state sovereignty and a serious violation of international laws and regulations. The hostility towards Qatar raised many questions, particularly as a statement made by Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt were contradictory, accusing Qatar of supporting opposing parties and groups. Hence, the accusations directed to Qatar are baseless. If there were a clear, tangible request from our neighboring countries, we have the right to respond through dialogue, and dialogue not through an illegal siege. Secretary Tillerson has repeatedly emphasized that demands of the blockading nations must be actionable and reasonable. The government of Qatar fully agrees that this would be the best framework for diffusing the current crisis and reaching appropriate formula to resolve it. I would like to conclude with a quote from the first speech of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Al-Thani, the Emir of Qatar, in 2013. Qatar is connected to the Arab states, foremost of which the Gulf states, with whom we seek the highest level of integration. Within this framework, Qatar is committed to its responsibilities toward Arab cooperation within the framework of the Gulf Cooperation Council and the Arab League and their institutions. Qatar respects the sovereignty and integrity of all Arab lands. End of quote. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your detailed speech and taking this generous time out of your busy schedule on your last day in the United States to be with us today. I forgot to mention earlier that the Minister is gracious enough to take some questions before he leaves. I know he's rushed for another appointment. After this, there are cards placed on your tables. Please go ahead and identify yourself, your affiliation, write your question, make it brief, preferably just a question, and raise your card. Staff will pick that card from you, and we'll be delighted to present all your questions to His Excellency to respond to. And may I also take this opportunity while you are regrouping and drafting your questions to introduce His Excellency, the Ambassador of Qatar to the United States, Sheikh Mohammed bin Al-Thani, whose cooperation was very crucial in making this event possible today. We thank him and we thank his staff for this support. Thank you. Adam, ABC News. You have said you're dealing directly with the State Department and Secretary Tillerson to address this crisis. But we have heard a different message from the White House. The President said you can't help terrorists. And weeks ago, he blasted Qatar for sponsoring terror. What do you make of these different messages from the same administration?
Thank you, Adam. Actually, we've been asked this question quite a lot, and I think we made it clear that normally State of Qatar government is dealing with different government agencies here in the United States, and they are fully aware about the progresses Qatar making, and they appreciate the relationship. And I think this has been already stated in different statements by the State Department and by the Department of Defense. Regarding the President statements or tweets, actually the reference in the tweet that he've been heard from leaders, and we believe that those leaders who are the same leaders of the blockading country. So I think that the President is getting more information from his own agencies, and he can verify that Qatar is not supporting terrorism. And we believe that the United States is very much engaged in putting an end to this situation.
Thank you. The next question is from Munzir Sulaiman Al-Mayadeen channel. When, in your judgment, will the U.S. role move from being that of a mediator to that of being a mediator and sponsor instead of just a facilitator?
Well, we appreciate the role which is the Emir of Kuwait is playing among the conflicting parties within the GCC. As 3 countries of them are GCC members and Qatar is a GCC member, so the mediation process normally need to be led by a country from the region, which is giving a better understanding for any complicity of the problem. But the role of United States is required because all those conflicting countries are the allies of United States. So United States is playing a very active role in supporting the Emir of Kuwait efforts, but also they are actively engaged in mediating and facilitating between the conflicting parties.
Paul Schenkman from U.S. News and World Report essentially asks the similar question that was asked before by ABC News. However, he adds, what does Qatar expect from the U.S.? Are you willing to use the airbase as a bargaining chip?
As a bargaining chip?
Bargaining chip with the U.S.
Well, we don't need to use a bargain chip with the U.S. I believe that, as I have mentioned, we have a long and strong history between Qatar and the United States in terms of strong ties and relationship and strategic relationship. Al-Udeid Air Base is just a clear manifestation for the strength of the relationship. We host there around 11,000 U.S. soldiers, which I think both countries is appreciating this, and it has a significant contribution to the efforts in the global coalition for countering Daesh. So I believe it's crucial for the region and for the stability and the security of the region that Al Udeid Air Base is active enough and involved enough in these efforts.
Tony Cully Foster, President of World Affairs Council, DC. Why is there a demand from Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain for the closure of Al Jazeera?
Well, I think you have to ask them this question. Al Jazeera was the first prominent media outlet in the region. It set a precedent in the GCC and in the Arab world for the Arab media. We believe that Al Jazeera is playing a role in the region, and it is a voice of hundreds of millions of the people in the region. So we believe of the importance of Al Jazeera and the independence of Al Jazeera to stay exist, and the closure of Al Jazeera, if this decision will be taken, it will be taken from inside Qatar, to not be dictated or imposed from outside Qatar.
This one is from Hakan Kapoor from the Anadolu Agency of Turkey. Turkey has decisively been supportive of Qatar since the beginning of the crisis. How, in your estimate, how do you evaluate Turkey's stance on the crisis in the Gulf?
Well, Qatar and Turkey has always long and strong relationship together, and the relationship actually between Turkey also and the rest of the Gulf nation. So it doesn't mean that their position when they are supporting Qatar undermines their relationship with the Gulf countries. They are urging the parties to engage in a dialogue. We believe that this was the position from all of our allies, that to de-escalate, to engage in a dialogue, to have a constructive engagement and interaction between the conflict party in order to sort out the issue. Turkey has been supporting Qatar supply chain because of the blockade which we've been affected with, and we are very thankful and grateful for this support.
Mohammed Al-Shinawi, Voice of America. Do you see any other role for the U.S. with the continued escalation from the four countries blockading Qatar? What is the next role, or the following role for the U.S. if, in addition to the negotiations or the mediation of Kuwait?
Well, as I have mentioned, that the U.S. role is crucial in this situation. All the conflicting parties are analyzed for the United States, and we believe that we are basing our relation on mutual respect between the countries and the United States. So the role is very important to continue the facilitation. We don't see any other solution, actually, rather than a political solution for this conflict, and finally to sit around the table and discuss what kind of grievances each countries have. So we urge the United States to continue its role and its engagement in facilitating this, and even exercising a pressure on the parties in order to engage in this dialogue.
A question from Al Jazeera Arabic. What do you expect will be the next step when the 10-day deadline set by Saudi, UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt expires?
Well, simply the grievances will be invalid. This is the answer we have. We have nothing to add to, because they have wrote these demands based on their own assumptions. We still believe that submitting such a list of demands is just jumping for a conclusion that their grievance is being approved or they have supported it with evidence. We believe that any negotiation need to start with a proper framework of discussion, submission of a claim, submission of evidences, proof of these evidences and validation, and then building a process in order to overcome any of those challenges. But submitting a demands with an ultimatum and giving it a validity date, this is really an exercise setting a precedent for us in the region and maybe in the world now.
Excellent. Deidre Finnerty from BBC. Why do you think the President of the United States decided to side with the Saudi camp, even though your country has been a host for the U.S. military base?
Well, as I mentioned to you, we believe that the main source of information in the relation between the United States and its own allies, the different government agencies whom they are interacting with those governments and with those allies. The president position being taken by, if you listen to other leaders, so I think that further engagement with cross agencies inside the United States will give a better insight for the president on the nature of the relationship between US and Qatar.
Your Excellency, did you meet with Jared Kushner on this trip?
No, I met.
Mohammed Ghanim, Syrian American Council. How is or has the crisis in the Gulf impacted efforts to end the war in Syria?
Well, I can speak about Qatar position in this. I think we're always building our policy based on principles and values, not based on crisis. So our policy toward Syria remains the same. We see that this crisis, this dramatic humanitarian crisis which is taking place in Syria should end, and should end very soon with a just solution. The perpetrators of war crimes should be held accountable for the crimes they have committed. I think the Syrian people deserve to be protected by the international community, and we will continue our efforts in urging all the international players to provide this protection for the Syrian people.
Phyllis Bennis, IPS. If Qatar is truly committed to non-military solutions, why not send home the 11,000 U.S. troops in Qatar and return the $12 billion of new U.S. arms?
Send back? Why was that? Actually, the 11,000 are not serving Qatar, only it's serving the region. The center of command is there. I'm not sure if you are aware that there are different installations which are representing the main contribution to the global coalition for anti-Daesh. So the operations is run from Qatar.
We have a question from Al Jazeera English. We have to give a balance, the Arabic versus the English here. James Bays asks, Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Jubeir said Qatar demands are non-negotiable. What happens if they do not back down from this stand?
So
yeah,
I got your point. Actually, we understand normally when there is a negotiation or there is a list of claims, it should be subject for negotiation. But demands, imposing demands and non-negotiable, this is an issue of sovereignty and disrespecting of the international law and the world order. So we believe there is an international law which is governing the relationship between countries, and there is a framework which is agreed by the international community that need to be dealt with when there is any conflict. So using the terminologies of demands and non-negotiable, I don't think this is a civilized way to engage in solving a crisis.
James added a follow-up. I guess he's used to these press conferences. Is there a risk to the GCC itself as a result of this crisis?
Well, more importantly here, we have to think about something which is Riyadh Summit. When it took place, it united the region for one common objective, to fight terrorism and to defeat terrorism. And it was agreed among the GCC US, and Arab Muslim countries and the US. And suddenly, 2 days after that, we see a diversion from this target to another target, which is Qatar, and which is a country part of the GCC organization. And despite all the challenges around us in this region, just focusing on an active country in the efforts for countering terrorism and trying to undermine the sovereignty of this country and getting this, undermining also the stability and the security of the region. We believe that this is raised a big question mark for the future of the GCC, because the GCC meant to be as a framework of security for regional security from any external threat. And those countries has engaged in this organization in order to provide security and stability for any of the countries which their security might be compromised by an external threat. When the threat is coming from inside GCC, there is suspicious about the sustainability of this organization. So we believe that even if this crisis will end soon, and which we hope that will end soon, that we have a long-lasting solution which ensure the safety and the stability of the GCC and the countries there, and ensure the safety and security of our people. So we don't want to have an agreement or a framework which will be developed to govern this relationship in the future that can give a chance for another act similar to this one as an act of aggression against any of the countries.
Thank you. Derek Davison, Low Blog. Can you tell us a little bit about the investigation into the Q&A hack? Any evidence as to who was behind it?
Well, actually, I don't have that much information about the investigation itself in details, but the information we had was presented by our Attorney General in a press conference that there are now sufficient evidence that there are some parties and some countries who are involved in the blockade, involved in the hacking crime against our news agency. The FBI has participated in the investigation, as well as the NCA from United Kingdom, and both agencies has verified that the news agency being hacked days before the 24th of May. So they have planted the malware there in the news agency servers days before that, which shows that this is a planned operation.
Thank you. David Ottaway, Wilson Center. The Saudis accuse Qatar of failing to carry out the 2014 agreement. What was Qatar supposed to do under that agreement?
Well, I think this is a baseless accusation, because they have violated Riyadh Agreement, if I might say. Riyadh Agreement has an arbitration mechanism, which I just mentioned in my speech. If there is any grievances, it should be discussed within this mechanism, and these articles never been invoked by them, as we have been surprised with all these measures being taken against Qatar without any direct interaction when we were in Riyadh during the summit, or even before that, few days before that, in the Ministerial Council. So we don't see that there is any violation for Riyadh Agreement coming from Qatar side. We see that those three countries, they are violated Riyadh Agreement, and actually they didn't even give any attention to any of its articles.
Ihsan Tarour, Washington Post. What do you make of the blockading countries' objections to Al Jazeera? The objections to Al Jazeera from the blockading countries. Why are they?
Well, I think they are unhappy sometimes maybe with the news Al Jazeera is broadcasting, but we have ensured everyone before that Al Jazeera is acting independently, and they are a professional media network. So if they have any problems with it, we are willing to facilitate for them to go directly and engage with them and talk to them. But Al Jazeera professionality will not be compromised because of any complaints if any one of them doesn't like the news. Al Jazeera made to be for this region to broadcast the reality and to broadcast the truth for the people, and the people has a lot of respect for Al Jazeera. So now hundreds of millions in the Arab region, they are following Al Jazeera because of the credibility of Al Jazeera, not because of anything else.
Barbara Slavin, Atlantic Council. The Saudis seem to be focusing on isolating Iran, but they seem to be, in practice, accomplishing the opposite. What is the status of Qatar's relations with Iran?
Well, Qatar has been always very straightforward position when it comes to relationship with Iran. Iran is our neighbor, and we have to have a constructive and positive relationship with them. And this cannot be done without engagement with Iran. But we are doing all these things within the GCC framework, which was a decision taken by the leaders of the GCC to engage with Iran in a dialogue based on principles, and these principles being conveyed to the Iranian authorities, and they responded back, and there is an exchange of a framework proposals between the GCC and Iran, and Kuwait is acting as the lead in these efforts. So any of the countries in the GCC, we believe they have to have a positive relation with Iran. But when it comes to Qatar, Qatar has always been basing its relation based on mutual respect and non-interference of other countries' affairs. And we believe that Iran, we have borders with them. We are sharing a gas field with them. So we have to have a relationship with them. But if they are accusing us that we are closer to Iran, Qatar ranked number 5 among the Gulf countries in terms of bilateral trade. 96% of the bilateral trade between the GCC and Iran is coming through Emirates. So even if we are going to increase our cooperation or our bilateral trade to become in the second or in the third rank among the GCC countries, it's far beyond. So this is from one aspect. Second aspect, we believe that they are exaggerating about cutting off with Iran or just not to become closer to Iran by doing all this to Qatar, because the measures which being imposed against Qatar, they never imposed it against Iran. So we don't know if this is a rational reason for them to take all these steps and these measures. Regarding what's Qatar's intention to be with Iran, Qatar has intended always to have a constructive and positive relationship with all the countries and the neighboring countries, and we will continue our engagement. We are now, our country is under a blockade. We don't have any access in the air except from Iran. We have our access from the sea also, either from Iran or from Oman or from Kuwait. So we have limited access, and we have to do whatever it takes to ensure the normal course of life for our people is ongoing and the supply chain is not interrupted by these measures.
Mr. Minister, you had some meetings on Capitol Hill this week. I believe you probably met, I think, with Senator Corkers. Do you believe his decision to block arms sales to GCC states is helpful to resolving this issue, this problem?
Well, we believe that any decision will exercise a pressure among the countries will be helpful, because they need to be pushed to deal with this matter seriously and not to keep country under blockade and just spending the time preparing a list of grievances and list of demands and not coming up with it, except after a statement of the State Department when they said that they've been mystified by the conflict in the region. So the decision which has been taken by the senator, I think it's highly appreciated and should contribute to push this process further.
Your Excellency, I just wanted you to know that I'm halfway through the question. As I promised you, you should be home by Saturday. Let me conclude with just 2 questions, and my apologies to the questions that I didn't get to. Some of them are repetitious or related. Thank you. to some of the other questions, but at any rate, Emily Tompkin, Foreign Policy, says the Saudi foreign minister said on Tuesday that Qatar will remain isolated if demands are not met. How do you respond to that?
So, as I have mentioned, there are two aspects of this crisis. There is one political, and there is another one is legal aspect. Qatar is pursuing its legal action with the relative international organization. We are not asking anyone to give us any favor. We are asking that the law should be implemented on those countries which took illegal actions against the state of Qatar. If their intention is to isolate Qatar by blockading the country or by shopping around different countries in Africa or elsewhere to cut off with Qatar, or otherwise they are going to cut off their aid, this is just reflecting the attitude they are acting in. Qatar, if they are talking about Qatar isolation, Qatar is not isolated. Qatar is part of the international community. What they are imposing is a blockade. It's not an isolation. The isolation is something different. It's normally done for countries which are proved wrongdoing. Qatar has been the most progressive country in that region, and we believe Qatar has a lot of allies and a lot of friends which keep it away from the isolation they are speaking about. Qatar has been a trustworthy partner for a lot of countries, including the United States, and we believe in these relationships, and we are going to pursue our way in taking legal action and opening up this illegal blockade against us.
Hani Findakli will conclude with this question. Can Your Excellency define the main objectives of Qatar foreign policy as the foreign minister of the country, and how do you implement that?
Well,
that is the subject of another lecture.
This is a wide question, actually. I cannot
briefly
answer it, but let me just summarize it for you in a few words. Qatar has been always followed an open door policy. So normally the adversaries can come and meet in Qatar. Normally Qatar is offering access for those adversaries to come and meet. And the driver for our foreign policy is to keep engaging with everyone, to keep the chance and the opportunity for dialogue, for ending any conflict and a peaceful solution, valid and viable option, and especially for our allies. When you have a trustworthy partner who has an access to the adversaries, I think this is an advantage. And when we are engaging with others and with different adversaries, it doesn't mean that we are endorsing their ideas or their ideology. So Qatar has been doing this now for 2 decades. We used to have the Israeli trade office, and we have Hamas political office. We have the Taliban representation, and we have the largest American base in the region. So it doesn't mean that Qatar is endorsing any of the adversaries. And Qatar is just facilitating and providing the platform for those adversaries and for those opponents to meet together and to engage and to solve their problems. A lot of conflicts took decades and took centuries sometime in the world, and at the end it's never been solved in a battlefield. It's been solved around the table of negotiation. So if Qatar can be a force for good for the security and the stability of the region, why don't we take advantage of this? Second, our policy normally driven by the fair and just demands of the people. So we cannot say that we are going to remain neutral when it comes to a people versus brutal regimes, a people versus dictatorships. So here, when some people start to think about it, that Qatar has changed its policy from a mediator to taking a part. We didn't change the policy. The policy remained as it is. When we took apart for the people during the Arab Spring, it was because this was the desire of the people. They were peacefully uprising against brutal governments, dictatorships, and they've been, those dictatorships and those governments, they militarized their peaceful uprising and turn it to a civil wars. So here, when we are picking the sides in such an event, I think we picked the right side when we are picking the side of the people. But meanwhile, we were taking a side in the Syrian crisis. Yes, we took the side of the people. We took a side in the Libya crisis. Yes, because we took the side of the people when a dictator started to bomb his own people. But also we had our ongoing effort in mediating between conflicting parties. Our efforts between Eritrea and Djibouti at that time was ongoing. We have still an ongoing efforts in mediation between different adversaries. Our efforts in Afghanistan is still ongoing, in Somalia. Everywhere in our mediation effort is still ongoing, and wherever we find that Qatar can contribute positively to the security and stability of the world, I think Qatar will never hesitate to participate. And we have a lot of international partners who are partnering with us in our efforts, and we have a visible and transparent process in implementing these efforts. So I think basically this, to summarize our policy, and as also stated in our constitution, which was voted by the people, that Qatar policy is preserving the sovereignty and the independence of the state of Qatar, and we are not accepting any interference in any other country's affairs. So these are the basic values and the principles which we believe in.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, go ahead. Thank you very much for being here today. I would like to ask you a favor, if you could just remain seated for just 3 minutes to allow the minister and his delegation to exit quickly for his next appointment. We took a lot of his time today, and we appreciate that. And again, thank you, Sheikh Mohammed, for your presence with us. Thank you, Sheikh Mishal, for being here. Staff, friends, the delegation from Qatar, and we'll stay in touch. You stay in touch. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.